There's a growing sense around Celtic FC right now that something just isn't lining up, and you can feel it in every performance, in every reaction after the final whistle, and especially in the words coming out of the dressing room. When Callum McGregor stepped forward after the weekend's result and urged everyone to stay calm, it sounded like the kind of message you expect from a captain trying to steady the ship. But when you actually look at what's happening on the pitch, calm is probably the last word you'd use to describe this team at the moment. That's where the real frustration begins to creep in, because there's a clear disconnect between what's being said publicly and what supporters are watching unfold. McGregor spoke about keeping level heads, about understanding the situation, about drawing on past experiences where the squad has come through difficult moments. And to be fair, he's been part of teams that have handled pressure before, teams that have gone on winning runs when it mattered most. But this version of Celtic doesn't quite feel like those sides, and that's the uncomfortable truth a lot of fans are starting to accept. When you break it down, the situation is brutally simple. The league campaign has reached a point where there's almost no margin for error left. The idea of going on a long winning run sounds good in theory, but when you look at the actual form this season, it becomes much harder to believe. The longest run of consecutive wins hasn't exactly been dominant, and now the expectation is to suddenly find a level of consistency that just hasn't been there. That's the gamble everything is resting on. And then you look ahead at the fixtures, and that's where the doubts really start to build. Big matches at home, tricky away days, opponents who have already proven they can cause problems. It's not just about picking up points anymore. It's about doing it under pressure, with the weight of the season hanging over every single game. You're asking this group to deliver almost perfection at a time when they've looked anything but composed. What stood out most from that last performance wasn't just the result, it was the reaction to adversity. When things started to go wrong, there wasn't that sense of control, there wasn't that belief that the team could turn it around. Instead, it felt rushed, disjointed, almost panicked. That's the opposite of calm, and it raises serious questions about whether this squad has the mentality needed for a title push in these circumstances. At the same time, it's not as straightforward as saying there's no character in the team. There have been moments this season where they've shown resilience, where they've fought back from difficult positions and found late goals. Those flashes are what make this situation so confusing, because you know there is something there. The problem is that it hasn't been consistent, and at this stage of the season, inconsistency is exactly what you can't afford. Another layer to all of this is the way defeats have unfolded. It's one thing to lose tight matches where the margins are small, but too many times this season, when Celtic have been beaten, they've been beaten convincingly. Games drifting away long before the final whistle, performances where the opposition looks comfortable, even dominant. That's what really damages belief, both inside the squad and among the supporters watching it all happen. And then there's the issue that's been hanging over the team all season long, the lack of stability in key positions. Up front in particular, it's felt like a constant rotation, different options being tried, none of them fully convincing. For a club like Celtic, having uncertainty in such a crucial role is always going to have consequences. Goals win matches, and when there's no reliable source of them, everything else becomes that bit harder. You can extend that conversation across the pitch as well. Changes in defense, uncertainty in midfield combinations, wide areas that haven't quite settled. It creates a situation where the team never fully finds its rhythm, never builds that understanding that comes from consistency. Instead, it feels like a side still searching for answers deep into the campaign, and that's never a good sign when you're chasing a title. All of this feeds into a bigger picture, one that goes beyond just what's happening during 90 minutes on a match day. There's a sense that this season hasn't just gone off track by accident, but that it's the result of issues that have been building over time. Decisions that haven't quite worked, gaps that haven't been properly addressed, and a structure that hasn't adapted quickly enough to keep things moving forward. So when McGregor talks about staying calm, you can understand the intention behind it. He's trying to bring clarity, to stop the situation from spiraling emotionally. But calm alone isn't going to fix what's happening here. If anything, what this team seems to need is urgency, intensity, and a clear identity on the pitch. Because without that, the idea of turning things around in the final stretch of the season starts to feel less like a plan and more like a hope. As the pressure continues to build, attention inevitably shifts from just the performances to the individuals on the pitch. And right now, there's a real sense that too many players are drifting through games without truly stamping their authority. That's a harsh assessment, but it's one that's being echoed more and more when you look at how matches are unfolding. There have been spells where the intensity drops, where the urgency disappears, and when you combine that with the stakes at this stage of the season, it becomes incredibly difficult to ignore. What makes it even more frustrating is that this isn't a squad lacking experience or moments of quality. We've seen glimpses, even in recent weeks, of what this team can produce when everything clicks. Comebacks from difficult positions, late goals that spark belief, performances that suggest there's still a strong core in there. But those moments feel isolated rather than part of a consistent pattern, and that inconsistency is what's holding the team back from mounting a serious and sustained challenge. The conversation around mentality has become unavoidable. It's not just about tactics or selection anymore. It's about how the team reacts when things start to go against them. There's a visible shift in body language at times, a sense that once the momentum swings, it's incredibly difficult to wrestle it back. You can almost feel the doubt creeping in, and at this level, that split-second hesitation can be the difference between staying in a match and watching it slip away. Up front, the situation has been particularly telling. Over the course of the season, there's been a constant rotation of options, different players stepping in, none of them fully convincing as the long-term solution. For a club of this size, that kind of instability in the attacking line is always going to have consequences. Goals are the currency of success, and without a dependable source, the entire structure of the team starts to wobble. It's not just about who is playing as the central striker, it's about the lack of continuity. Partnerships haven't had time to develop, understanding hasn't been allowed to grow, and every time a new combination is introduced, it feels like the team is starting from scratch again. That uncertainty spreads, affecting how the midfield supports attacks, how wide players deliver into the box, and ultimately how confident the team looks in the final third. Defensively, similar questions can be asked. Changes in personnel, shifting partnerships, and a lack of a settled backline have all contributed to moments where the team looks vulnerable. When you don't have that solid foundation, it puts even more pressure on the rest of the side to compensate, and that's when mistakes start to creep in. It becomes a cycle that's difficult to break, especially when confidence is already fragile. The broader issue here is that it doesn't feel like a single problem with a simple fix. It's a combination of factors all coming together at the worst possible time. Injuries have played their part, of course, disrupting any chance of building consistency. But beyond that, there's a lingering feeling that some of these problems were always there, just waiting for the right moment to fully expose themselves. When you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it starts to resemble a season where underlying issues have finally caught up with the club. It's not just about one poor run of form or one bad result. It's about patterns that have been repeating themselves. Decisions in recruitment, squad management, and overall direction all feed into what we're seeing now on the pitch. There's also the psychological weight of expectation. At a club like Celtic FC, anything less than dominance brings scrutiny, and when results start to slip, that pressure intensifies quickly. Players feel it, the staff feel it, and the supporters certainly feel it. Every misplaced pass, every missed chance, every defensive lapse gets magnified, and that can either drive a team forward or completely unsettle them. Right now, it looks like it's doing the latter. Instead of responding with authority, the team has too often looked uncertain, caught between trying to play with control and being forced into rushed decisions. That lack of clarity is costing them dearly, especially in matches where composure is essential. And yet, despite all of this, the situation isn't entirely beyond recovery. The path is still there, even if it's incredibly narrow. The idea of putting together a strong run of results isn't impossible, but it requires a level of belief and execution that hasn't been consistently shown. It means stepping onto the pitch with a clear mindset, cutting out the errors, and finding a way to impose themselves on games rather than reacting to them. The next fixtures will define everything, not just in terms of points, but in terms of identity. This is where we find out what this group is really made of, whether they can rise above the doubts and deliver when it matters most, or whether the issues that have been building all season will continue to hold them back when the pressure reaches its peak. There's also a growing conversation around leadership on the pitch, and not just in terms of wearing the armband. Players look around in difficult moments for someone to take control, to demand more, to shift the energy of the game, and at times that presence has felt missing. Callum McGregor has tried to be that voice, trying to steady things and keep the focus clear, but leadership can't come from one player alone. It has to be spread across the team, especially in matches where momentum is constantly shifting. What's particularly concerning is how quickly matches seem to slip away once control is lost. There have been games this season where a single setback turns into a collapse, not necessarily in scoreline immediately, but in structure and belief. The opposition senses it, the crowd senses it, and suddenly the team looks vulnerable in ways that shouldn't be happening at this level. That inability to reset within a match is something that needs addressing fast if there's any hope of turning things around. Supporters, meanwhile, are reaching that point where patience starts to wear thin. Traveling, investing time and money, backing the team week in and week out, they expect a certain standard of performance, regardless of the result. And when that standard isn't met, especially in crucial stages of the season, frustration becomes inevitable. It's not just about losing games. It's about how those games are being lost, and that distinction matters more than ever right now. There's also the question of whether the squad has the right balance to handle this kind of pressure. Talent is there, no doubt about it, but balance and cohesion have been inconsistent. You can have quality in individual areas, but if it doesn't come together as a unit, it rarely translates into sustained success. That's what separates teams that compete from teams that actually go on to win titles, especially in a league where consistency is everything. All of this leads into what feels like a defining period for Celtic FC. Every match from here carries massive weight, not just for the table, but for the direction of the club moving forward. The response in these next games won't just shape the outcome of the season. It will shape how this group is remembered and what changes might follow in the months ahead before we proceed. Subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Paradise is buzzing with whispers and wide-eyed excitement as talk gathers pace that Don Naderi is set to pull on the famous green and white, pinning a 3-season deal with Celtic. The noise around the move has grown louder by the hour, with supporters already treating it less like a rumor and more like an inevitability waiting to be confirmed. Naderi, a name that's been circulating quietly in scouting circles, is now right at the center of the storm. Word is he's been tracked for some time, admired for a style that blends sharp movement, composure on the ball, and a fearless edge that fits the Celtic mold. Though nothing official's been stamped, the sense around the club is that something big is brewing behind closed doors. Fans gathering round the stadium and flooding social channels are holding back. There's a feeling this could be one of those signings that sneaks up on the wider game, but hits hard once it lands. Some reckon he's a project, others swear he's ready to make an instant mark. Either way, the anticipation is real, and it's building. Inside the camp, there's quiet confidence. The idea of securing a player on a long-term deal suggests belief, not just in potential, but in purpose. Celtic didn't hand out 3-year commitments lightly, and if the rumors hold true, it points to a clear plan taking shape. For now, it remains talk, speculation carried on the Glasgow wind. But the mood? Electric. The supporters can feel it in their bones. Something's coming, and Don Naderi might just be the next name echoing round Paradise. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.